see me listening to it in the phone. Um, yeah, so I kind of because Dad has done a lot of listening. We both have to like your music and everything, but I've always been a fan of Never Been to Spain and all that. When Elvis sang it, and I wanted to kind of go back to I guess the beginning, like in regards to Elvis's history with your family. w- what kind of stories? I'll try to kind of break it down a little better. What are some stories from like the early days that you kind of grew up like hearing that not a ton of people from like the outside knew that because you had, I mean, a direct contact to it. So what are some things with like Elvis in the early days that you kind of grew up hearing?
Yeah, well, I'll give you guys I'll do the only the hits is what I was talking about right now, the way because we do Heartbreak Hotel a lot, especially in the more sort of intimate theater shows, and I'll always try to explain the origin story of that song, which I think is it's magical in its own right because it's such an iconic, not only iconic song for Elvis being his first million selling hit and his first sort of um, first hit of that scale, but it was one of his first hits that was specifically written for him. So my grandma in the early 1950s was a part-time school teacher, a part-time PR agent, and a part-time songwriter. And she had written a few songs that had got picked up by some friends of her, like Patsy Cline did a couple, Earl Scruggs. She had a small name as a songwriter, but mainly her big power in the industry was PR. And she was the head PR agent for Colonel Tom Parker. Mainly his premier act at the time, a guy named Hank Snow, who was known as the yodeling cowboy, the biggest country artist on the planet in the
Yeah, he
1950s.
was like the Elvis of country, right?
Absolutely, he was. He was. He had the whole suits and everything. He had the whole nine. And my grandma, basically, the story that she would tell, which is always a little different than what my dad told, and a little different than all the articles. They're all going to add their character to it. But the story that I've recently been a little more privy to, digging into this a little bit, is that basically Elvis's manager, when he was really young, when he was just starting out, reached out to my grandmother because they knew she was sort of a bridge to Hank Snow and Colonel Tom Parker, and reached out to my grandma and said her name was May born Axton. Said, "Can you get? Do you think you can get Elvis on like a show to open up for Hank? Like we think that'd be really cool. It'd be a huge favor. Can you please do that?" My grandma, not knowing really anything about Elvis, just she had this internal thing to try and help artists and musicians grow. That was just something she always believed in till the day she died. Um, she was able to sneak Elvis into an opening slot on two shows, opening up for Hank Snow. And she didn't tell Colonel Tom Parker that this was happening because he was like, "No, who's this kid? I have no idea. I'm not wasting time on this unknown kid." And basically, my grandma didn't tell Colonel Tom Parker. She got Elvis in the band a hotel room, made sure to like sneak him some food, and then when it was time for the opening act to come up, she brought Elvis on. And right after the first show, Colonel Tom Parker's like, "All right, let's see where the next one goes." They did another show, and he's like, "All right, that's it. I'm going to go figure out how to steal this kid from his manager." And he bought out the contract from the at that time manager, who really was just a video, a radio DJ who just saw Elvis and really liked what he was doing. Um,
Yeah. You're talking about
and
Bob Neal,
so,
right?
yeah, exactly, yeah. And
Yeah,
so
Bob Neal.
after Colonel Tom Parker bought that out, him and my grandma went to the head of RCA because my grandma had such a heavy PR background. She sort of was Colonel Tom Parker's, wingman, wingwoman, however you want to do it. And they convinced RCA to sign Elvis to the biggest contract in the history of mankind.
Yeah.
No, $20,000. And
No, you're actually selling yourself short on that. She signed it. That contract was for 35,000. It was actually 35,000.
35,000.
Yep.
I need to
So
change my stories then.
give yourself some more credit. Yeah, it was actually
Dang it.
$35,000. Yeah, sure was.
There we go. Well, good. Good. And yeah, I need this. I'm running this through you guys' filter too, the real Elvis fans. But so they signed that contract, and after a few months, they were worried because they didn't have a hit. There was nothing, you know. They took this big risk on him, And so they went to my grandma, and they said, "Do you think you could maybe write him a hint?" And she's like, "Well, let me go try. Let me see what I can do." Like, she had promised a lot of hits to a lot of people. That was part of her job. And she got her songwriting partner, a guy named Tommy Durden. They went and got a newspaper and laid it out on the kitchen counter. We're looking at sort of articles that could inspire them to write a song, as most songwriters do, right? You look for that little thing, that little spark to give you
Right.
that creative, run. And basically, they found this article that said a man had taken his own life and left only a note in his pocket that said, "I walk a lonely street."
Yeah.
Now, in the next 22 minutes, my grandma and Tommy Durden wrote Heartbreak Hotel, he said, specifically to be Elvis's number one hit. And after a couple times trying to get it to him through the manager machine, it didn't work. And then we're at, I think, a conference, like a songwriting conference or something, and ran into Elvis. And she's like, "Come up to the hotel room. I want you to listen to this song." And all the the powers that be are like, "No, Elvis, we're too busy." He's like, "Hold on, like May's my friend. Let's go see what happens." They listened to it one time, and Elvis said he sat in there in the room, listened to it like 10 times in a row. He's like, "That's it. Like that's it. We're cutting this like as soon as we can." And it became quickly became his number one hit. And maybe one of the most influential songs in the history of mankind. It's definitely sort of one of the first rock and roll songs considered one of the first rock songs.
Well,
So,
too, and you also should hit on this is that a lot of the, if you go back and listen to a lot of the big names in rock, a lot of people have said that it was that song, hearing Elvis for the first time sing that song, is what pulled them
yeah.
into music, and so that was very influential on a lot of levels.
And that's something that I've only learned from being attached to this and touring and meeting other musicians and
Yeah.
digging into it. That wasn't something that was sort of known in the family, but like exactly like you said, when Elton John got his service award or whatever a couple years ago, he said "Heartbreak Hotel" was the song that made him want to play music.
Yeah,
Keith Richards said that.
that's
Paul
right.
McCartney, the biggest names in the history of music all said that that was the song that sort of hit something in them and made them want to go play rock and roll music. So that is something that I will forever be proud to know that my grandmother, a little music teacher from Oklahoma and Texas, decided to do something good for another young musician and maybe change the face of the music industry forever because
Yeah,
of
and
it.
before we get off here, I want to touch back on that, the whole thing about your grandmother. But before we do that, I want to make sure that everybody knows out there. Talk about talent between her and Durden. They wrote this song in less than a half hour. Am I correct on that?
So yeah, the 22 minutes, and they both said that. That one is true. They're both like 22 minutes from beginning to end. And I guess the original line is like Tommy Durden was so taken back by this guy taking his own life. He's like, everybody out there has somebody that loves them. This is so sad. My grandma's like, well, if these people were walking on a lonely street, let's put a Heartbreak Hotel at the end of it, and that was it. I think that then it just flowed, it went crazy. And one more last little fact on that is my grandma made sure they gave Elvis writing credits on that song, even though he had nothing to do with it,
Yeah.
specifically because my grandma wanted to give him some financial stability at the beginning of his career so he could help his family and grow. Because she asked him, she's like, "What do you want to do if you become famous?" He's like, "I just want to buy my mom a house." Was the one thing he said. So she's like, "We're going to make sure this happens." So that's a lot of people talk about that, but she actually made sure to put that into play, and I think that's something that I'm very proud of too. And Elvis never took credit for that. He always said it was just something nice that she happened to do for him.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on something that I was looking at a couple of videos that you had done with some other folks here recently, and you talk a lot about you're very humble in the stuff that you do, and I think it's cool because I was looking at these videos and saw where you do a lot of things to help other people in the music business and try to extend a hand. I was thinking about all the stuff that your grandmother had done. Being she was a very powerful woman, and you know had the nickname of Queen Mother of Nashville, and I started looking into that a little deeper. I mean, I knew that the basics when it came to your grandma, but when I started looking in a little deeper, I looked at all the careers that she touched, and I looked at like Dolly Parton, Willie Nelson, Reba McEntire, all these names, and I was like, man, she was connected with so many people, so many big stars, and then Blake Shelton. Heard the story about how you know what I thought was so cool is that your grandmother at her place had that like that studio room was it over the garage, right? And
Yeah.
she would allow people that were coming to town that were trying to get off the ground, she would allow them to come and stay there. And I just thought, wow. And I connected that up with you, and I thought, she would be proud of you because it seems like you're keeping uh, that Axton family tradition of helping people because you're doing the same thing just in a different way. So I just think that she would be so proud of what you're doing.
Well, thank you for saying that. That makes me that makes my heart grow 10 sizes right there because like I said a big part of carrying this legacy is not just the name, it's carrying the underlying aspects of it, and the community aspect was huge with my grandma. And I'm one of those where I feel like when she passed away, that industry lost its heart in a way.
Yeah.
And because it seems like it has sort of done everything very different. So she might have been part of the old guard who really believed in that kind of approach to curating and creating artists and superstars, and I think it made for more relatable, deeper, better music. And I'm not saying she's the only one. There was some more, but that was definitely something she believed in and really put into practice, and something my dad did as well. He believed in sharing shows and letting people open up for him and get their footing underneath them. And that's something I wish I had more power to be able to help people. To be honest, I'm just a small little independent guy trying to carve my way and spread joy. But wherever I can, I will try and help. And the world needs more of that. Can never have too much of it.
Well, I'd like to share this with you real quick, and then I'm sure Michael's got a couple other questions. But there's this thing that we do, and a lot of the people that follow us really like the idea. I came up with this thought years ago. We've been doing this for a long, long time, but and I think you've looked at our site, so you know that we travel the country, going to the buildings that he performed in, and all that. But I've been a fan my entire life. I mean, my family, aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody was an Elvis fan. And so I've literally been doing this my entire life. But one of the things that I came up with several years ago, I said, Elvis is like a huge quilt that's made up of literally millions of threads. And I look at, and I did this a while back in a post, and we've done it on these lives that we do, where I said, when you have somebody that's that big, a star like that, they're made up with threads, and those threads to me are people. And it's like when you look at his band, what a tremendous band he had. Those threads are James Burton, those threads are Ronnie Tutt, the drummer, those threads are Glenn Hardin, the piano player, those threads are the backup singers, those threads were his mother, father, anybody that was involved in his life. And so when I was making up my notes today, just to remind me of questions to ask you, I thought, you know, your your mom, your grandmother was one of these threads in his life. Your dad was a thread in his life because if he doesn't pen "Never Been to Spain," then we're not sitting here talking about it tonight, going, what a tremendous vocal performance Elvis could do with that song. Because if that song's not written by your dad, he ain't singing it. So I just look at Elvis as this giant quilt with all these millions of threads running through it and all these different people that came along, your grandmother, your dad, and all these people that make him up. And I wanted to share that with you, that your family is in that quilt. You guys are one of the strings in there. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Well, thank you. And honored to be that. It just makes the quilt stronger too, right? It's
It
one of those
does,
things.
yeah.
The more threads. So like I said, it's honored, and and obviously I love Elvis for many different reasons, but one cool thing about never been to Spain, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't he never recorded it. He only
No,
did it live.
live. That's
And
right.
so
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that Madison Square Garden was is probably the most iconic rendition of that, right? I think, and
Yeah, I
if
think
I
so. And
remember correctly.
when you see it in the movie Epic, it's it just knocks you back a couple rows. I mean, it just it, and the guy what got me about Elvis is you know that this big bold sound is getting ready to come because he's doing it. He loved. I tell everybody, he loved that crescendo stuff. He loved. I've got you here, but I've got something coming around the corner that's gonna just lay you out. And it's like it was like no effort. There was just literally, yes, facial expression would change because he's really straining to get the notes, but it's like it's just like right there. I don't I don't have to do anything to make it happen. It's just right there. So
Yep.
I thought he was a phenomenal performer. So but
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, I want to go back to you for a little bit because I want to know, since we can't ask your dad and we can't ask your grandmother, uh, I'm fascinated by songwriting. So um, there's some things that I wanted to ask you with regards to where do like most of your thoughts come from? Where you know, I heard a story one time where they said that Merle Haggard, which was one of my all-time country favorites, that Merle Haggard, I love Waylon Jennings, that in country, I love all types of music, but they said he could sit down at a breakfast table in a diner and pen out a song on the back of a napkin. So where do a lot of your thoughts? Where are you usually? Do you have to go somewhere to get your head into it? What's the weirdest place you've ever written a song, like on a napkin? Or I'm fascinated by that kind of stuff.
Me, it's multifaceted. Sometimes it'll be just a fun little line in your head that you're like, "Oh, I got to write that down." You reach for whatever is near you to get that. So yes, there's a lot of sentences and lines written on random pieces of paper all throughout my life.
Right.
Sometimes it'll be more of a melody, a melody or a theme in your head that you can build the lyrics around. Sometimes it's really just, it's a guitar part that I start plucking. I'm like, that's cool. That's a happier thing. So let me look for something happy around here and go from that. But it's usually, so the one thing I'll say with Heartbreak Hotel and my dad's biggest song, which was Joy of the World, right? Jeremiah was born.
Yeah.
Those were both written very quickly. Those songs, what I call them, like the heart had paper, right? So just like something that hit here, went to the heart and right to the paper. There was not a lot of thought to it. It was really just organic. Both of those were written in about 20 minutes. And those were the two biggest songs. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it's something that's very relatable, and there's a simplicity to it and organicness to it, that makes those sort of land the way they do, and they're just both fun, simple songs in their own
They
ways.
are. They're joy of
But
the world. But I got to ask you real quick. Did your dad ever share with you what was going on in his head when fish is in the deep blue sea? Joy to you and me. I mean, what what are you
well,
thinking about there when you're talking about fishes in the deep blue sea?
I
What's
mean,
going on?
that's almost a better story than Heartbreak Hotel, to be honest.
Let's hear it.
So basically, this was the late '60s. I think this was like '69 or 1970, because it was in 1971. But my dad wrote it. At that time, he was signed to RCA Records, and they had a recording session going on. And they had used up all the material, and they had about 30 minutes left on the clock. And back then, the clock was spinning tape that was costing lots of money.
Oh wow.
So my dad's piano player at the time, a guy named David P. Jackson, he's like, well, let's just make something up really quick. Like, let's just fill it right now, fill our half an hour. And they're like, what about that song we started, the riff we were writing, the dun dun dun. That's all they had, dun dun dun. And so my dad's like, fine, I'll write some filler lyrics. These are just temporary. I'll just write the first thing that comes to my head. He's like, Jared Miles, the bullfrog, was a good friend of mine. He happened to be drinking, I think, a jug of wine at the time.
All
So
right, there it
naturally,
is.
that frog had to be drinking some wine. And then, like I said, they were literally filler lyrics that he was going to change when he had time. And he was, because this was the Laurel Canyon days. where my dad's house was at right at the mouth of it. It was sort of like one of the party houses in Laurel Canyon in the '60s, and so it was a routine Wednesday was. Like James Taylor making some coffee and Dylan hanging out in the backyard, and maybe a Beatle would stop by. Like that was a normal day back. It was just sort of the magical era.
Right.
And my dad was shooting pool. He had a pool table with some guys from Three Dog Night, and my dad's like, "Hey, look at it was just on in the background." And they're like, "What song is that?" And he's like, "No, it's just like a goofy song that it's not finished." And they're like, "Well, we need a B side. Like that sounds fun enough. Let's just put it on our album and see what happens." And that was it. He didn't have time to change it. Glad he didn't, because Jeremiah, made the world a more joyous place.
Yeah, that's right. Um, I want to give Michael a chance to jump in here, and then I got some other stuff I want to ask you, but go ahead.
So one thing that I was kind of wondering was obviously, the musical influence with your dad and the history with your grandmother. Aside from your dad and I guess Elvis, what were some other musical influences that kind of led you to the career that you have in music?
So yeah, my influences. Well, I came around a lot later. My dad was already I was born in '82, so I'm old now. But I came around. My dad was already very well established, and my dad had this mentality of he didn't care what genre his music was. He just wanted to write a good song. It's all about serving the song. So at the beginning of his career was folk music. His biggest hits were all rock, you know, rock anthems and standards. And then later in his career was all country music. So I always sort of took that mentality of you could find value in every genre. My CD player was filled with everything you could find. Definitely some old country. They definitely throw a little Waylon in there. And then being a California kid, I love sort of you get into Sublime and Chili Peppers. You get sort of beachy and quirky. I always loved give me some Doors and Allman and Skinner to mix in there.
Yep.
Led Zeppelin is like my
Yep.
favorite band I think ever, just because they were musically hyper talented. They knew how to mix genres and sort of create something that was unique. But really, I mean, I can find something in every kind of genre that can really connect. And there's so many great musicians nowadays. But those, so my those that sort of loaded thing. My influences are a little bit of everything, but mainly sort of like West Coast roots music. And then as a kid, my mom would take me to every blues. Give me like BB King and James Brown and
Yeah.
Ray Charles. That was all the stuff we would go see as shows. So I think what I write is a good smattering of that.
Yeah. Because of Elvis growing up, being an Elvis was first with me, but country was big also in my family. And like I say, Waylon, Johnny Cash, Merle Haggard, those were my guys. I actually have a funny story, and I've never shared this on any of these lives, but Michael knows about it. But I was a music and still am music fanatic, and I started very, very early. And we had a bedroom downstairs in our house, and I used to go and get on the bed. Uh, I'm talking when I was like 3, 4 years old, and there was a guitar down there, and I went down there, and I thought that when I got up on the bed, I was on stage and I was doing a little concert, and I started strumming the strings with my fingers, and it started to hurt after a while. And I couldn't have been more than about three. There's no way I was four, but yeah, I was about 3 years old, and it started to hurt my fingers. It's a true story. And I went and started to hurt my fingers, so I started looking around for something that I could use as a pick, and I couldn't find the pick. And my mom was out in the backyard, so I found a box of wooden matches, and don't use those as a guitar pick, because I was strumming to a Johnny Cash song, and I looked down and it had lit the match on fire, and I threw it down on the bed, and it lit the bed on fire. Thank God it did not burn the house down, but that's my claim to fame. They all said it was that I was playing Ring of Fire, and that's not true. That just went with the story, but I think it was Folsom Prison Blues or something like that. But it was not Ring of Fire. But yeah, I got a pretty good whipping on that one. So, but that's my entertainment on stage performance story.
It's
So
pretty good. I don't know. Like,
yeah, you
that's
can.
pretty
It'd
dang
be
good.
tough to top that one. But hey, I wanted to tell you, and I'm just being honest. When you know, like I said, I knew about your dad. Knew about him very well. And like I say, because of the Elvis thing, I knew about your grandmother. But um, connecting up with you caused me to go down a different road and take another journey. Which Michael will tell you, there's not a genre of music. I won't get into rap, but I'll do the old blues. I'll do you know, I like the obviously the country. Some of the new country, you know, I'm okay with some of the new stuff. I'm more of a traditionalist on that. You know, I like the Texas style blues and you know the Mississippi style down, you know, down in there. I like that kind of stuff. But when I'm always open to any style of music. And when I started listening to your stuff, the two songs that I really like, and I've got them downloaded on the phone, but I like the song "Crazy City," and I like "Bad Moon." Those are my favorites. And I wanted to ask you about "Bad Moon." Is that because I'm a Western fan? You kind of tied that into like I kind of the song made me think of like Jesse James, like you know they were train robbers. Is am I on track with that?
Absolutely, yeah. It's That's exactly what it is. A gang robbing trains on the high plains energy
That
to it.
That was
Yeah.
cool, and I love your lines in there are just that you can see the story, you can see this happening. And I said, "Man," I said, "I'm a Western fan," and I said, "This guy's writing a song that you can actually see it playing in your head." I love the part where you talk about, you know, we only ride at night. You know, I, I,
Yeah.
ju- I just think that's cool. And then Crazy City, I like the way that flows because I don't know of anybody that hasn't wanted to escape to, and I guess that was your thought with that song, is you just wanted to
No.
escape to a place where you could just kind of reconnect with
Yeah.
yourself, right?
Absolutely. And for everybody that's different. For me, coming from, I live in Los Angeles, the biggest, scariest metropolitan in the world,
I can't imagine.
metropolitan area, and but I'm from a very small mountain town up in Lake Tahoe. So um, having that dichotomy, having that need for me to go get regrounded and go hug a tree and go run around in nature. I
Yeah.
mean, everybody has their thing. For some people, it's go to the beach. Some people, it's go run in the mountains. Some people want to go to the city to get, some little different life experience and go back. So that's what that song's all about, like finding that, whatever it may be for you. you know.
That's a good song.
So
And
I'm glad,
speaking
I'm glad it landed with you. It makes me happy.
Yeah, well, it did, and I really like the story that you tell in Bad Moon, but and I'm going to be listening to a lot more because I like your stuff, and I like it's just got a flow to, especially the Crazy City. It's got a really cool flow to it, and I also want to comment on your are your musicians that uh, I see in some of the videos, are they your full time guys that stay with you, or do you mix people in and out quite a bit?
So me and the guitar player, you'll see, he's my right hand man, my
He's
best
phenomenal.
musical buddy. And we do. That's one thing that's really fun live is we battle. We do guitar battles on Bad Moon, as we go back and forth and do an old fashioned showdown every show. So the live versions of those are a lot more extended and a lot more fluid
Right.
and a little more jammy type thing. So that's really fun because he's an Allman Brothers protege.
Mm.
So we do a lot. We lean into that, and we call it guitarmonies a lot. So yeah, he's my main man. Everybody else rotates in and out a little bit, but we have a core group that, when we do our bigger shows or festivals, I make sure I get the A top guys I can at the time, or top
Well,
people I
you
can
got a
get.
good sound and you're easy to find on Spotify. Just put up your name and all your stuff's right there. So I hope that some of the folks that are on here tonight watching will do that because it's good stuff. And you can start with the song "Bad Moon" if you like that kind of stuff, or "Crazy City." That'll get you started and then go from there. So I think that some people really like what you're doing. Did you have some more
I
questions?
hope so.
I just got the wrap up Elvis questions at the end.
Okay. I wanted to go back because a lot of the folks that follow us, I know that they will enjoy the conversation we just had. Because I don't like for it to always be when we interview somebody, I don't like for it to be 100% about Elvis because that kind of leaves the person that you're interviewing out of the loop. So I wanted to make sure we included you and I wanted to get your story. But I wanted to go back to your grandmother's time with Elvis. and I got one question, and then we want to share something that I found a while back. Even before I knew we were going to be doing this interview, I found this a while back, and I listened to it, and I thought it was really cool. You probably have heard it. Maybe you haven't. It would be cool if you haven't heard it, but we're going to share something with you in just a minute. Um, but the question that I had, did you ever get a chance to sit down with her, and did she ever tell you anything about her times without, like, did she share any little, you know, what a nice young man he was? Or because your mom, what's cool about this is your mom was actually in 55 when she's dealing with Elvis.
You mean grandmother?
I'm sorry, grandmother. She's double his age. He's 20 years old and 55, and that would have put your grandmother at about 40 based on
Mhm.
when she was born. So she was born
Mhm.
in 1914. So she's double his age, right? So she's
Mhm.
kind of like that mother figure kind of, and I think Elvis really responded to that really well because of his own mother. I think that he looked at her because she was being like a little bit of a guardian. So I was just wondering, did she ever share any stories with you with regards to Elvis?
So with me, she always just said he was the nicest, most polite young man ever. That was her generic thing that she would say,
Right.
you know, to us. But recently, while I was driving out to Tulsa for this recording, I did the reverse rock stars thing, and I flew the band out, and I just drove. Me and the band drove for 2 days straight, going
Oh,
east. And but I always talk to my
my
cousin, who's
cousin,
sort
who's
of
sort
like
of
the
like the
family
family
historian,
historian,
and
and
she
she
has
has
all
all
my
my
grandma's
grandma's
paperwork,
paperwork,
and
and
she
she
has
has
sort
sort
of
of
all
all
that
that
stuff.
stuff.
So
So
we're
we
always
always
dig
dig
through
through
it
it
while I'm driving and talk about what she finds. And she was telling me this, relating the story that when my grandma first met Elvis, that Elvis would come over all the time. Like you said, sort of as like a mom, he would just come over and hang out and just be around the house and asking how he can help and just being sort of like a, you know, surrogate kid in a way. And that my dad would tell a story that he'd come, you know, they need a ride to like football practice or they need a ride to the store. My grandma would be like, Elvis, you know, take the keys and go get the kids some ice cream. Like, get out of here. Like, get out of my hair, you dang kids, type thing. And
Right.
they said it was just such a weird thing because they just knew Elvis as sort of the kid who was hanging around the house, and only later, I mean, not that much later, but did he become like this epic superstar that you know that ended up changing the world that way. But my grandma always treated people with a lot of respect and kindness, and Elvis was just, like I said, fit in perfectly, and he was very respectful and kind kid. And they said he was a good babysitter, is what they said. He was very nice.
Well, one of the final things I want to share with you is something that I found a while back, and excuse me, something that I found a while back, and I was listening to it because I was um, looking for different um, radio people that had talked to him in the early days, and I looked back and I said, "Wow, I already had this. I'd already found this a while back." But it is uh, your grandmother also did some like radio announcing different times, right? Where she would go on the radio and announce like the star that she was pushing at the time. And there's an interview that was taped in 1955. It's not really an interview. It's just well, we're going to play it, and hopefully you haven't heard it. I'm sure you have, but just act like you didn't. Um, but it was taped on May 12th of 55. And the cool thing about it's in Jacksonville. And when I looked up where it would have been, it was he was playing at a baseball stadium. So, back in the day, all those guys, they perform, in barns, you know, jukebox joints, wherever they just went wherever they could to play a gig. And this was at a baseball stadium that Elvis performed in 55. And what I really love about this, if you'll listen, I never met your grandmother, obviously, but what I love about this interview is if you'll listen about halfway through, it's 3 minutes long, about halfway through, you're going to hear Elvis say, well, my songs just, I need to get better promotion for my songs. And your grandmother kind of like bumps him back a little bit, if you will, as if to say, "Hey, listen here, young man," and he respected that. And you'll hear a lot of "yes, ma'am" in here. So we're going to go ahead and play this, and hopefully you haven't heard this, and it'll make you feel good hearing your grandma.
All right. So hopefully you are able to hear this.
Just make it maybe.
Okay,
Now,
that's
that makes it better. Well, that's Elvis, now, you are sort of a bebop artist more than anything else, aren't you? Is that what you call you?
Well, I never have given myself a name, but a lot of the disc jockeys call me bopping, hillbilly, and bebop. I don't know.
Sort of a combination, but I've seen you perform, and you're a terrific performer. And a lot of my listeners have seen you, and they've heard your records, and they think they're very wonderful. And of course, you really skyrocketed to fame on That's All Right, Mama. Wasn't that the one?
Well, yes, ma'am. That was the one that got me on my way and everything. It's kind of...
And on Sun Records, I believe.
Ma'am, that's right.
I think that's very fine, and you've started touring the country, and you've covered a lot of territory in the last few months, I believe.
Yes, ma'am. I've covered a lot, mostly in West Texas. That's where my records are hottest. Around in San Angelo and Lubbock and Midland and Amarillo.
And they tell me that they almost mob you there, the teenagers. They like you so much. But you know, I happen to know that you have toured all down in the eastern part of the country, too, down through Florida and around, and that the people went for you there about as well as out in West Texas. Isn't that right?
Well, I wasn't very well known down here. I'm just with a small company, and my records don't have a distribution that they should have, but...
Well, of course, that's coming. You know, it takes a little bit of time for that, and you know, some of the people who've been in the business 20 years, they're just, it takes that long to get distribution all over the United States, but I think you are one of the fastest rising young stars perhaps in the field. And I know that the people go for you. You know, I watched you perform one time down in Florida, and I noticed that the older people got about as big a kick out of you as the teenagers. I thought that was an amazing thing.
Well, I imagine just the way all three of us move on the stage, we act like we just...
Yes, and we mustn't leave out Scotty and Bill, who really do a terrific job in backing you up.
Well, they sure do. I really am lucky to have those two boys because they really are good. Each one of them has an individual style of his own, and...
Do you know what I can't understand is how you keep that leg shaking just at the right tempo all the time you're singing.
Well, it gets tired sometimes. I had to stop and rest it, but it just automatically wiggles like that.
Is that it? Just automatically does it? You started back in high school, didn't you? Singing for around public performances for school and things of that sort?
Well, no, I never did sing anywhere in public in my life till I made this first record.
Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you just went right on and you to their hearts, and you're doing a wonderful job, and I want to congratulate you on that. And I want to say, too, Elvis, it's been very nice having you in the studio today.
Well, thank you very much, May, and I'd like to personally thank you for really promoting my records down here because you really have done a wonderful job, and I really do appreciate it because if you don't have people backing you, people pushing you, well, you might as well quit.
Well, you're right there. I do not deserve the credit, though. It's my wonderful friends and listeners all over the country who should be given that credit because they deserve it, and they're very fine people and very fine friends of yours. I'll tell you what let's do for those fine friends right now. Let's play your latest number. How about that?
Okay, it's a good deal.
All right.
How about that? I would have loved your grandmother, I'm telling you. Just listening to that because if you just take a look at it, she made sure she gave credit to the guys that played with him, Scotty and Bill. And then she Elvis thanked her, and then she said, "I don't deserve the credit." I mean, what a tremendous woman. And it's, you know, and if you think about it, if you go back in the early 50s when she's doing this, she's one of the very few women that were even involved in the music industry at this time because that was not that was not, women were just not found there, unfortunately. And it's a shame because there were so many influential women in Elvis's life. His mother, your grandmother, Marion Keisker at Sun Records. I mean, think about that. If when Elvis goes in there, if she doesn't keep, you know, pulling him back in there and saying, you got to keep coming back in here, they're going to figure this out one day, then we never would have known Elvis. So, you know, it's a lot of strong women in his life. And I, I latch onto that because I had a strong mom. So I'm right there with Elvis on that, where it's like, hey, I'm all about, you know, the strength of a woman, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely, and like I said, and they said Elvis was nothing but gracious in that interview too. I have heard that, but it's been a long time. So
Yeah.
that was very very
Well,
cool. And I think that was
also
one of his
one of his
first
first
like
like
nationally
nationally
syndicated
syndicated
radio
radio
appearances. I
appearances. I
think, if
think,
not
if not
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 his
his
first.
first.
So that's what I
Yeah.
heard. That's what the family thing.
Yeah, and if you look at that, they're talking about him, just getting started, and I'm thinking you had no idea what was coming around the corner in just a year from when he was talking to your grandmother, and your grandmother being a big part of what was coming just around the corner, and they didn't know it. They didn't know it.
Yeah,
Hey, let's
that's why we do this.
I'm gonna give it over to Michael, and he can wrap us up, and we'll let you go.
All right. I just kind of had one question, and it's one that we kind of ask most of our interviewees. And it's a hard question, but you have to take out Heartbreak Hotel and Never Been to Spain. But what are some of your top Elvis songs?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. I mean, that's all right, little mama is awesome. It's tough because I mean that's his first, right? I mean, that's all right.
Yeah.
But I think I like Elvis when it's a little more stripped down. But then, the 70s crazy giant band Elvis is there's some magical stuff going on there. I mean, even I hate to say it, even like Viva Las Vegas and all that stuff. It's fun. There's a magic to it. There's so much energy and power behind the stuff he's going. And like you said, he at that point his voice was so rich and like secretly powerful in a way. He knew how to work dynamics. Um, I always go back online to the Unchained Melody,
Yeah.
his last performance.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
sort of like this weirdly like spiritual moment. Sort of, you could tell this guy is he just like, was exuding music out of every pore, and that's something you just don't see a lot with people in general, especially the biggest artists in the world.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think you can't go wrong with any Elvis, but like I said, you can't go wrong with any of those things. But
Hey,
those are my cheating answers.
before we leave, Matt, can you share with everybody that's watching and the people that'll watch later, because this will go up on YouTube, but share with us the best ways to get, we know Spotify and all that, but anything else where you're going to be coming up, some dates that you got coming up, where you're going to be. We'd like to share that.
Absolutely, of course, and that's in the end, that's the most important thing for us independent artists is, I'm not here to make fans. I want to make friends. I want people that we can go on this journey together for the rest of my life doing this. That's I'm going to play
Awesome. Um,
Montana,
There it is.
Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. In May, we're going out to Texas and Oklahoma. And in August and September and October, we go over the Eastern Seaboard and Nashville. So, MattAxton.com is where you can find all that info and try and support the cause and help us spread some joy, learn a little bit of the history, and say hi. And Matt Axton Music on all the social media platforms. And like I said, that's it. We're just fiercely independent and hope we can make some friends and entertain you guys somewhere along the way.
That's cool that you're just wanting to play the music and make people happy, and you're not chasing, some star thing. That's refreshing because it's refreshing. When you talk about the Eastern Seaboard, what we're in Virginia, so where in Virginia are you going to be?
Where did we go? We didn't get to play in Virginia. We did Morgantown, which is another
West Virginia,
Virginia.
right?
Yeah, but we didn't do Virginia yet. So if you got any ideas, we did like New York City and Vermont, New Hampshire. We did all that. We did the Carolinas and West Virginia, but we haven't been able to hit Virginia yet. So
How does that
like
work?
I said,
Here we're getting into a deep conversation, but how does that work? Like, so do you call places and say, hey, we see you have a small venue there, or medium sized venue, we'd like to come in? How does that work? You request it and they let you come in, or how does it work?
yeah, well, it's a good mix, just like writing a song, right? There's many different ways to catch this stuff. Where if let's say, usually what will happen, I'll try to make this short and sweet. You'll get a gig somewhere, like you reach out, you get a bigger, staple flagship gig, like a festival or a bigger thing, and then you have to build your routing out to that. If it's a brand new market, that's exactly what you do. You cold call find all the places that have music. You cold call them. You say like, hey, is this a genre you're interested in? Is this a capacity that we could sort of help with? Is there an act we could open up with or for? And you just say, hey, it's brand new to this thing. For us, we try to look for places that sort of have built-in crowds that just want like a professional band to come put on a show. Because one thing we do that's different than I think almost every other artist is we really cater each show to the venue. Like we will on one run we'll go play like a jam festival and then go do a seated theater show and then to go do like sort of a bluegrass thing and then then go do a honky tonk in the same weekend. And they're all going to be sort of different shows, all different
Right.
sort of approaches to the songs and shows. So it's a lot more work, but it's very artistically rewarding when it does line up, and that allows us to meet a bunch of different styles of fans and ideally bring them all together next time we come to town, and then keep growing that way.
Right.
But there's no blueprint to this crazy
Okay.
industry right now, and we just want to meet good people out there.
Well, I'm a Marty Stewart fanatic, so because that guy can play the guitar and a mandolin
Yeah.
like crazy. But he plays a place here locally that I think you might be interested in. So let's next couple of days, let's give each other, call you, you call me, and I'll tell you where it is, and then you can see. I'll even go down there and see if we can get you in there. So, but let's hook up on that after we get off here, and we'll go for it.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say too. Like usually the word of mouth or like somebody telling us where to look,
Okay.
that exponentially makes it more likely we can get into someone. So that's what it takes.
I can help you out with this area. All right.
All right, we'd love to.
All right, Michael.
All right, guys. Well, we thank you, and Matt, we thank you for joining us tonight. We had some great stories. For those of you that kind of jumped in late, this will be posted in its entirety when we end the stream. If you guys have any questions for us, you can email us at epbackontour@gmail.com, or you can contact Matt. He's got his social media, he's got Spotify. Just make sure you check all that out. And yeah, we again thank you guys for joining tonight. And Matt, like we said, thank you for joining us.
Of course, thank you guys for your time, and we'll see you on the road too.
All right, buddy. It was a real pleasure talking to you, and we just want to make sure that everybody understands that a lot of times when we do these interviews, it's not 100% Elvis because we got to talk about other stuff that is part of that quilt. We got to talk about the other strings in there. So that's what we did tonight. So thank you for joining us, Matt.
Thank you. Of course. My
Have a
pleasure.
good night.